Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session, a Times Higher Education webinar in partnership with Salesforce. We will be delving into how education technology can deliver ROI while enhancing the student experience. My name is Gitanjali Goswami. I'm Branded Content Manager for APAC at TSG, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Before we get started, we would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. We recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to elders past and present. So let's take a look at our agenda today. We will start off with a brief welcome and introduction to our speakers. We will then hand things off to Salesforce to provide a market overview and to highlight the key findings from the new Total Economic Impact Report on Salesforce for Education from Forrester. We will have a fireside chat featuring our guest speaker, Craig Warren, who is the Chief Digital Officer at Deakin University, and then followed by an overview of the latest innovations, including a live demo of the reimagined Education Cloud. Lastly, there will be the opportunity to put questions to the panel during the final 15 minutes of the hour that we have scheduled. So please feel free to type any questions in the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will answer as many as possible before the end. And with that, let's dive into a lineup of speakers today, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to a wonderful guest. So our first speaker for today is Rachel Greenfield, Director of Product Marketing at Salesforce, dialing in to join us live from Los Angeles. Welcome, Rachel. I'm also joined today by Craig Warren, Chief Digital Officer at Deakin University, who was instrumental in providing ANZ insights as part of the recent Forrester Total Economic Impact Research. Welcome, Craig. We also have Marco Hello. We also have Marco Bordieri on the webinar today. Marco is a Principal Solution Engineer at Salesforce Education team, and he'll be walking us through a live demo later during the webinar. Marco, welcome, and a huge thank you all for joining. Okay, so let's get the thing started. I'm going to hand it off to Rachel for a market overview and key insights that helped shape the latest report. Over to you, Rachel.
Great, thank you so much, Geeta, and I'm so excited to be here today. I sit on our education product marketing team here at Salesforce, and I get the pleasure of connecting with customers all across the globe to really help improve the student experience as well as the faculty and staff experience. And so today I'm going to share what we're seeing across the industry and then dive into a newly commissioned report from Forrester Consulting that focuses in on some of the key findings that institutions can use to really prove the value of their technology investments. And we'll be sharing the link to this report in the chat during the webinar so you can dive in, explore the report on your own time, and maybe even share it with a colleague as well. And just a quick reminder that I do want to remind everyone today that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and to please base any purchasing decisions on products and services that are currently available. Okay, well, before we dive into all the great content we've got planned today, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days to join us. And thank you for all the great work you do in education as well to support students across the globe. We really hope to make today a valuable use of your time and to share some inspiration from our community of education trailblazers and to really help you unpack how to showcase some of that ROI from your technology investments as well. So let's dive right in. Okay, so we're in a very exciting and pivotal time, I'd say, right now in education, and talking with customers, it's clear that the industry is really at this inflection point. There's some macro challenges happening that many of you might be feeling as well, such as shifting demographics and more competition for students. But there's also this real opportunity to create a more seamless experience for students, faculty, and staff. We've also been seeing a huge evolution around generative AI, and we've been having some real conversations with customers about the practical implications of AI, how to be thoughtful about AI use as well, and just how to make sure you're taking in all the considerations necessary to really leverage the most out of that technology. But in looking at the opportunities ahead, there's really been one key theme that's come to life from our customers, and that's this opportunity to really create learner relationships for life. And it's more important now than ever before. We do an annual survey here at Salesforce called our Connected Student Report. And in our latest version, we found that close to 50% of students globally are planning to continue learning through a higher ed institution after graduation. And that's a stat that really stood out to us here at Salesforce. And I think it's just a testament to how now is the time to really think holistically about how you can build those relationships today to keep learners coming back to your institution throughout their lifetime to reskill and upskill. And that lifelong engagement, it's especially important, especially when you think about the multiple roles that just one constituent might have with your institution throughout their education journey. For instance, an engaged donor might be a lifelong learner at your institution or a parent of a current student. I personally think of family members, my mom, for instance, who's a current alum of an institution, but she also works at that institution as a staff member in career services, or friends who are alumni of my alma mater, but have gone back to get a business degree. And so in order to thrive, we're really working with customers and with institutions to think about how they can leverage this lifelong value with constituents and manage these multiple roles that a constituent might have throughout their journey. In fact, the question we often like to ask institutions is if they have that technology foundation, not just to support the multiple roles, but also to really drive that lifelong success of each and every learner. And in the conversations we have with customers, it always comes back to the data. You know, having that ability to manage data and to make sure that you have that single source of truth is incredibly important. A lot of institutions we talk to are managing multiple systems, have data silos, and it's pretty much impossible to have that single source of truth for that student, let alone to understand the multiple roles that one constituent might have at your institution. And so in supporting that complete learner journey all the way from prospect to alumni, we really encourage folks to think about how to access real-time data and to how to create that really unified profile so you can strengthen and grow relationships with learners every step of the way. And this is ultimately our goal for every customer we work with here at Salesforce. And for us, driving lifelong impact really starts by empowering faculty and staff, and it really starts with thinking about outcomes. And so that equals, clear and measurable value that you can track from your technology investments throughout the entire student life cycle. And to us, that means, helping institutions move away from reactive engagements and opportunities or situations where you might miss a student falling through the cracks, to being more proactive to really drive those successful outcomes, or making sure that we're moving away from impersonal experiences that might be hitting every single student to really being thoughtful around how we can create more personalized experiences that drive engagement. And then if we look more onto like the faculty and staff side of the house, we know that there's often a lot of challenges with managing multiple systems, let alone the training and cost management that comes from that. And so we want to help institutions really have that integrated platform so they can get the time back to do what they do best, which is supporting students at scale. And finally, moving away from some of the piecemeal decision-making that might be happening across a campus to really being efficient and data-driven in decision-making across multiple departments. And if there's one thing I really want folks to walk away with today, it's the stat on the bottom of this slide. This is from that Connected Student Report I mentioned earlier. We found that students who had a great university experience and felt a strong sense of belonging, they're 31 times more likely to be a proud alum. And those alumni, they're the ones that are going to come back. They're going to re-engage with your institution, reskill and upskill throughout their lifetime. And we want all this for every institution out there. And so it's really this focus on building learner relationships for life that's really driven our innovation here at Salesforce and our focus on education. And so at Salesforce, we're really committed to helping institutions of all sizes power connected education journeys, not just today, but for that entire lifetime. And that's by utilizing the best of CRM technology, but also the latest in AI innovations. I mentioned generative AI a little bit earlier, as well as unified data strategies to really support institutions of all sizes. And we're already seeing institutions use Salesforce to personalize those learner relationships with AI, to drive insights and productivity, utilizing that one constituent profile that I mentioned earlier. and just ultimately driving lifelong impact because they're using the same #1 CRM platform that leading brands and companies out there are using as well, but they're using it for their institution, which is great. And you might be saying, okay, Rachel, this is fabulous. Thanks for sharing all this, but so what? Where's the proof in the pudding? How do I know that this can really, be beneficial for my institution? How do I know that I can get that ROI? And so I want to draw attention to the stat on this slide. This is from that Forrester Total Economic Impact Report I mentioned earlier, where on average institutions using Salesforce saw 153% return on their investment with a payback period of just 14 months. And so I'm going to transition now to walk into some of the findings from that report and to go through some of the latest metrics as well. And just for some context and to level set, Forrester interviewed 10 customers using Salesforce across 7 higher ed institutions in Australia, the United Kingdom, and the US. And for the purposes of their studies, Forrester aggregated the interviewees' experience into one composite institution. And so these are some of the core metrics that you see here on this slide. I mentioned that ROI stat, that 153% over 3 years with a 14-month payback period. Institutions using Salesforce also saw $6.8 million in productivity gains over 3 years, which equates to about a 12% increase in productivity, and $1.6 million in legacy environment savings over 3 years. And unsurprisingly, the themes of AI, data, and CRM came across in a lot of these customer interviews. Folks talked about the ability to automate many processes across the institution. They were able to gain access to data that they didn't have access to before, and they had the flexibility of a platform so they could quickly pivot with student and staff needs as those changed over time. And so I'm just going to dive into some of the more quantifiable benefits that Forrester found as well throughout the student life cycle. For this one, focused on recruitment, admissions, and enrollment. Folks that were using Salesforce at their institution, they were better able to guide their students throughout the application process, drive more personalized communications, and ultimately reduce applicant dropout as well. And so that led to a 5.5% increase in enrollment over 3 years. I think the quote on the slide is a really powerful one as well that really speaks to the testament of this value and this impact and ROI that institutions are seeing in their recruitment and admissions space. The second benefit was really all around the student experience. And so institutions saw an increase in first-year student retention rates by 15% over 3 years. And that first year, as we know, is so critical, being able to foster belonging, making sure students feel connected. And by using Salesforce, the institutions that we talked to, they were able to really foster more collaboration across departments, decrease response time to students, and ultimately have that holistic student view, which led to that increase in retention rates. The third area was focused on alumni and donor engagement, and institutions that were using Salesforce were able to really track and nurture their alumni relationships. They had clear visibility into the campaign pipeline, which is often a challenge at institutions to have that clear line of sight. And they were able to leverage a variety of campaign approaches to support large capital campaigns, small gift programs. And because of this, ultimately, institutions saw a 10% increase in fundraising contributions over 3 years. And this is probably my favorite stat from the Forrester report, this 12% increase in productivity. This really gets back to improving speed and data quality across institutions, eliminating time wasted from searching for siloed data, and just making sure that you have that single source of truth as well for multiple departments to leverage. And so that's what led to that 12% increase in productivity. And finally, just to highlight again, this legacy environment savings stat, the institution saved $1.6 million in legacy environment savings. And this gets back again to that integrated platform approach, being able to save costs with the unified platform. Also, again, not having to train staff multiple times on multiple systems by having one platform that really helped reduce that time loss that is typically spent on retraining staff on multiple technologies. And so ultimately, folks were able to see this great impact as well in ROI from Salesforce. So if you're interested in diving more into the report that we've got, there is the link here. You can scan the QR code. I know we've shared it in the chat as well, so you can dive in. explore the findings on your own time and share it with a colleague. And hopefully that was just a helpful snapshot of everything that we've seen here from an ROI perspective. I'm going to hand it back to Geeta now to dive into the panel portion of today's webinar.
Thank you, Rachel, for those very interesting insights about Salesforce's latest report. So now I would like to start the fireside chat by asking Craig our very first question. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today, Craig. You have been at Deakin University for over 20 years, having the unique perspective of seeing it change over time. How has your rich knowledge shaped the evolution of the university's data strategy overall?
Thanks, Geeta, and thanks, Rachel, for that refresher of all of those findings in the report. One of the things I was reflecting as you were presenting, just how many of those impacts we've seen, particularly in the last 2 years. I should say it's also, for me personally, a privilege to have worked at a higher education institution, a university, for the last 20 years. A university is a great place to work because of the staff that we work with, many learned staff, many great professionals that work at universities, and you never get over the joy of watching students graduate, experience their early stage life in their chosen discipline career. And as you described, Rachel, in the report, we see students from prospect all the way to alumni. Of course, it's lovely to see some of them go on and be famous, but it's wonderful to see most of them be successful. So with 20 years plus in the sector and over 40 years in IT, I hate to admit it, but I've seen the role of data change enormously, Geeta, and when I was reflecting on this question earlier, I thought that overall, many things in our digital environment started small and then grew. So, we started with just a few servers, and I can remember, again, in one of my early jobs, we named our servers via the phonetic alphabet because we thought there'd never be more than 26 of them. These days, I think, with virtual machines in cloud environments, we've got over 2,300 instances of servers. Similarly with PCs, we thought we'd buy a few, and these days we're up to 14,000 PCs in the university. And I guess we used to think about buying these very large disk drives that would store a few megabytes, and these days we're putting petabytes of data into the cloud. So we've brought the same solutions to all of those challenges that we've faced in the past, with things that have grown exponentially. And I thought about how we had approached, for example, IoT, which I think that's really a technology that's really just started to be focused for all of us over the last 3 or 4 years. And instead of thinking about a few devices that we're going to have, we're thinking about the millions of devices we're going to have. And to manage 1 million devices, to manage huge petabytes of storage, we need to bring management platforms to play. So we need to think about tools that help us to think about managing 10,000 devices as though they are one. And I think it's exactly the same in the data area. Overall, I would say there's a few things that are always going to be people's friends in the data area. There's things like homogeneity of platforms, so as fewer platforms as possible. I think things like reference architectures are going to be really important. So some great work has been done, at least in the Australian higher education sector, with a reference model for higher education, a business reference model. We need data standards as well. And then the third pillar, I think, which really helps us always with really large scale problems, is automation.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. And also a part of that evolution, how did you get started with Salesforce? How do you use it to improve the student experience, and how did you go about proving value for your investment?
Yes, thanks, Geeta. So I became Chief Digital Officer about 2 years ago at Deakin when we were going through a big organisational change associated with the need to tighten our belts around the impact that COVID was having on our institution. So as you would all be aware, or many people would be aware, international students just could not get into Australia, and that impacted the finances of the university. First thing we did was produce a new strategic plan, and one of its major focuses was that we adopted a number of strategic platforms. We'd had Salesforce as a product in our whole ecosystem of software, but with this new strategic plan, I can tell you, we identified 3 key strategic platforms, non-overlapping in terms of their capability in general. And as it turns out, 2 of those platforms come from Salesforce, as Salesforce, the product itself, and now the MuleSoft ownership. We thought integration, as the world became more and more SaaS, that we would find that it was very easy to implement products, but the bit we would have to do as a central IT provider to the university would be integration. And Salesforce was going to be the front of house on a lot of customer experience and back-end data management for us. We also moved from a very traditional waterfall delivery model to a product-based approach. Feedback from our customers was they didn't like waiting 2 years to see the result of an initiative, that we weren't working closely enough with them. So this involved moving to fusion teams with business representatives being very much a part of our delivery framework. Also associated with that new way of working is that we have virtually quarterly value delivery assessments, mostly done through retrospectives, and we have fortnightly value drops. So the business is seeing the new features, the value we're delivering very iteratively and very quickly. And this is a journey we're on, particularly with Salesforce, because Salesforce is not something that you just plug it in. Of course, it's a journey that for us, we're basically looking at every single touch point we have a student and making sure everyone, particularly the digital touch points, whether it be when we've got students at prospect stage or when they're at alumni stage, every campaign, if it's a donor campaign, every interaction that we have a student will all end up being recorded in Salesforce via automation and integration so that we can analyse it. At the stage we're at the moment, 2 years in, we already have some really impressive examples of where we've got access to data that is driving outcomes for our students. I'll give you just one example. Is we've integrated all the touch points around assessment, all of the touch points around interactions with the learning management system. And so we can start to see students that are at risk. So this is current students. This is not prospects, not alumni. This is current students, of which, again, like the data I spoke about earlier, for Deakin, we've gone from about 13,000 students when I started at the institution to now 64,000 students. So they're very large numbers, but we all want to give them a personalised experience, particularly in the digital environment. So we can now identify students that are at risk of failure. Perhaps they're always late submitting assignments. That can be identified. And as it turns out, in that particular instance, the action that's required is automated as well. And it generally goes to the academic staff member to undertake an intervention. And the interventions are also recorded in Salesforce so that we know we can then measure the success of those interventions with students likely to fail. I've got other examples. I think I'll talk about another example a little bit further along, Geeta, but that's a good example with the student cohort at least.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. And now I would like to ask Rachel that you work with universities worldwide. Based on your interactions with customers, what does best practice look like for leveraging technology and data to create a more modern, engaged student experience?
Yeah, thank you so much, Geeta. And I just have to say, I was taking notes on all the great things Craig was saying, because he spoke about integration, which I think is pivotal. When we talk about data strategies with institutions, I think the very first step I often advise on is understanding where all of your data is coming from. Sometimes that's the first hurdle to tackle, is understanding all of those different data sources, whether it's web engagement metrics, email open rates, advising appointment data. Being able to know where your data is coming from is step one. The second area that I think about when I help customers really think through an engaged student experience is bringing that data together so that your faculty and staff can really be empowered to do what they do best. Really having that single source of truth, as I mentioned earlier, is critical. But we also know bringing in the academic data, the non-academic data, both of those pieces are super important to really creating a modern, engaged student experience. Things like well-being, belonging, all the engagement that's happening outside of the classroom. Being able to track that to really know each and every one of your students is super important. And then the final piece I'll just mention is really taking action on those insights as well. So I talked a lot about generative AI a little bit earlier, predictive AI, being able to answer questions like, how likely is it that a student might drop out, or what are my enrollment trends going to be? If you have that single source of truth of your data, you can really start to gather those types of valuable insights and create that modern experience. I think about Amazon and how it lets me know that I need to refill some household items before I'm even aware of it. It's that predictive quality and that being one step ahead. They've got all that data in that single source of truth, and that's really what we try to advise for customers as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel. I would like to ask Craig that we have talked about the impact of technology on the student experience, but we know that meeting the needs of staff and faculty is equally important. So in your experience, what tools and data do they need to be efficient and productive in their day-to-day roles?
Yeah, thanks, Geeta. I've heard people describe universities as small cities because there's large numbers of buildings and there's very large numbers of different constituents on the campuses of the universities. And the campuses are somewhat porous these days because we have people working from all over the place. But in our own particular example, we're up to nearly 10,000 staff that at any one time could be having interactions across the university. Rachel's probably covered a little bit of, for example, with a student prospect, we need to we need to have details of all of the touch points that we've had with that student so that we can nurture them through the next stage of an interaction. And certainly Salesforce can do all of that for us. But I thought I'd speak about just one example in our staff area. As many will probably know on the call, We have staff that are associated with the professional running of the university. We have academic staff, and the academic staff could be doing pure research, or they could be doing pure just teaching and learning, or they could be doing a combination of both. In the research space, the academic staff historically would have a large number of people that they interact with. That could be both from other universities, and of course, ideally it would include industry, and an ever-increasing trend is to bring government into a tripartisan sort of arrangement. So one of our projects that we've got going on at the moment, we call it the REACH project, which we're very good at universities of coming up with acronyms, even better than the IT industry, I think. So REACH stands for Recycling and Clean Energy Commercialisation Hub. Deakin won a $50 million Trailblazer award from the federal government, but it's now resulted in a $380 million project, which has over 70 organisations collaborating with the university. And I'd say historically, before we had Salesforce, there was a lot of tripping over our toes with those collaborations. So someone would be ringing from a department, someone else would be emailing, getting the same information out of a partner, and no one knew that those interactions were going on across the institution. We've used Salesforce, at least with CRM capability, to rationalise those interactions, but we can now utilise the data as well to measure the effectiveness, in a much more dynamic way with those relationships, and ensure that, again, when we're nurturing the partners that we're working with, because it's important that they stay in the fold, if you like, throughout the duration of the project, in much the same way. They have the same needs as what our students have from prospect to donor.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. Rachel, is there anything you would like to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I second a lot of what Craig was saying. I love the example of partners that an institution might have, and I think it comes to life, of course, with student experiences too. Sometimes institutions don't know that X advisor reached out to this student, and this person talked to this student, and that person emailed that student. And sometimes just being able to have that insight can be a game changer in making sure that student doesn't fall through the cracks. And so I think being able to have that view is incredibly important. And especially when we think about efficiency and productivity, sometimes it's just finding all those touch points that can take up a lot of time. And so that's a big kind of area that I like to focus on with customers. And Craig definitely hit on that as well.
Thank you, Rachel. And I would like to ask Craig that how are you thinking about your role as CDO in the context of the rise of trends around AI and data? Are there any tips for other institutions to stay ahead of this trend?
So I wish there was a playbook for how to deal with generative AI, Geeta, but it is such a moving, very quickly technology that I have to admit that I don't believe anyone knows exactly what's going to happen in this space. But again, using our history of what's happened in the past when new technologies have come to us, there's a need to experiment early. I would say my advice to people would be to experiment with public facilities first, without providing your data to those public facilities, as Samsung unfortunately did to their peril. I would certainly acknowledge in any conversations that you're having with the leadership of your organisation that you don't know everything. So therefore, networking and using the likes of Forrester, who have got lots and lots of good expert advice in this area. I would read, listen, watch and absorb. I used to spend much of my downtime reading about new technologies, but there's only one I'm reading about now, which is generative AI. So it's really become a focus. So after using the public facilities, I would then do a proof of concept in a sandpit internally using your own data. You can certainly do that with a variety. Part of our reason for adopting 3 strategic platforms is we've also seen the rapid rate at which these large enterprise platforms like Salesforce can adopt new technology. We used to do some of this ourselves at Deakin, and we've produced a number of really, really good award-winning AI products over the years, but we felt that for the future, we couldn't compete with the size and resources of organisations like Salesforce, and we're better to leverage their capability. The final thing I would say, and it's I've listened to a lot of really, really learned people talk about generative AI and how important it is to have things like responsible use, or another popular term that's being used is mindful use of AI, and perhaps have an organisational policy. But this is a technology that's going to really shape what it means for us to be human. And I think it needs to be really a real focal point for all digital leaders. And I, for one, don't have all the answers, but I'm talking and reading and listening to everyone I can talk on this subject.
Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you. Also, I would like to hand over to Rachel, who will give an overview presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Geeta, and thank you, Craig, for that great conversation. So many good insights and takeaways for everyone attending the webinar today. I'm going to dive into the next portion of our webinar and highlight some of our latest innovations, and then I'll hand it off to my colleague, Marco, for a live demo. So earlier in the webinar, you heard me highlight a few of the key things that are really empowering institutions to achieve that incredible ROI I mentioned from the Forrester report. And it's really that impact and value of a platform, as you heard Craig mention, that's really helped fuel our innovation for the education industry. And earlier this year, you might have heard that we launched the Reimagined Education Cloud. This is really the next evolution of innovation that we're driving here at Salesforce. And you might be asking, well, what is the Reimagined Education Cloud? And I like to break it down into 3 key pillars. The first is we have ready to go configurable apps for each stage of the learner journey, such as recruitment and admissions and student success. We're going to be seeing that in a little bit with the live demo. The second is an institution-wide approach to common services, such as form building, appointment scheduling, case management. And this layer here is really what gets me the most excited about Education Cloud, because it's really going to be a game changer to scale faculty and staff and their efficiencies campus-wide, because you can use these common components across multiple departments. And so we're seeing a lot of great traction there. And the third is a data foundation. And this data foundation has education-specific objects, logic, and automation built right into the Salesforce platform. So you have that flexibility needed to spin up new learning programs and other areas for your institution leadership, your faculty, your staff, and your students. And so with Education Cloud, we're essentially able to deliver even more impact and ROI and really builds upon those metrics I shared earlier. And I will also notice that Education Cloud is generally available today. And so are two specific apps that we developed. So that's Education Cloud for recruitment and admissions, which we released in March, and Education Cloud for student success, which we just launched this past June. So I could go on and talk about Education Cloud, but I'm a big fan of showing it. So I'm going to hand it off to Marco for a live demo, and he's going to dive into the next portion of our webinar.
Thank you, Rachel. And we're moving from a Los Angeles accent to a Sydney accent, so to speak, because I'm originally from Italy. Anyway, good morning. My name is Marco, and I will be your host for the next 10 minutes. We're going to talk about student success today, and we're going to see how Education Cloud enables a connected experience between the student and the institution. Specifically, how advisors and ultimately any touch point for the student can rely on a single source of truth and deliver a consistent and rewarding experience for the student that we learn is so important. With real-time data available, staff can be responsive and even proactive, anticipating students' needs. These are the three personas that we're going to see today. Actually, we're going to look at the first two. We're going to see how our student Sophia connects with the academic advisor Adam using Education Cloud. For the sake of time, we are not looking into the third persona, the manager responsible for advisory, but I just wanted to leave it here so to let you know that we also provide that high-level view on how the function is performed. Now, let's meet Sophia. She's a student she joined the university 6 months ago, and she's very keen to be successful by leveraging all the resources that we offer. She's also enjoying her time on the campus, but sometimes she feels a bit overwhelmed by having so much on her plate. So without further ado, let's switch to her portal. So now, as I said, I'm playing the role of Sophia, and I'm using my student portal. And by the way, I'm now using my laptop, but if for any moment I want to use my my phone, I can see that everything gets adapted to the correct resolution that I need for my optimal experience. Now, let's move back. Just hidden now by the toolbar. It's just, here we go. So, on my portal, I can see everything that I need. I can see, for example, a wealth of information about the service that are provided and anything else. But also it's a way for me to access my own information if I need to change, for example, my phone number. I just got a new phone number or maybe a new address. I can easily modify those without having to ask for anyone to do that. I can also check my calendar to see my appointments, for example, how my week look like. And these are the appointments that I'm going to have with my advisory team in a few days. I can see there is an upcoming one that's for tomorrow and other appointments that has been held in the past. But something I'm very keen is keeping an eye on my dashboard. Here I can see my overall performance across different measures. I can see how I compare to the average of my courses, of my program. I can see whether I'm doing a little bit better, a little bit worse. I can see my progress towards my degree. I can see it's almost half, which is a bit surprising considering I just started, but demo data. And I can also see how I compare with my peers across a number of dimensions, like how many times I use my learning management system and how I'm active in discussions, absence, and so on. So that's quite keen because I'm new to the environment. I'm still forming my sense of belonging, and knowing what my peers are doing. It's always something that I want to keep an eye on. Support. Well, I could be spending 1 hour just showing the capability of this portal, but we have the search capability leveraging all the knowledge base. But if I don't find what I'm looking for, I can always create a support case. And I can see, for example, I created a couple of inquiries. There's one around this program, and then also there was a question around the tuition bill. And in any moment, I could click and see what the status. I can see they are new, will be taken in charge, and there will be a whole conversation about these cases. But also, I can see that I've been assigned what's called a care plan. because I'm a new student, I've been assigned a student success plan for the first year. And this is a set of activities that have been assigned to me in order to be successful. What are those activities? Well, easy. I just click on task and I can see, how I'm doing. I can see that there are 4 of them in red because I'm a little bit lagging behind. So probably I need to stay on top of this. And others that are planned for the future. So the first one is meet with your academic advisor, which is something that I was meant to be doing last month, but I haven't. So maybe let's start with that. I notice I have a success team. So let's have a look at who is my academic advisor. I got a number of people supporting me to be successful, and I may look at the ones that are supporting for academics. I see it's Adam, and I can see someone else is supporting me for well-being, Courtney. And because, if you remember, we need to connect with my academic advisor, Adam Ferris, I will schedule an appointment. So I will just click on schedule appointment. Here are a number of options. So we are looking at Adam. I could be looking into something else. I could be, maybe I don't have anyone in mind. I just want to have a pool of people contacting me. And in this case, we know it's Adam. So I will just move next. The topic is about degree planning because that's what I need to do. So just confirm, next. Different options, virtual, in-person, phone. In this case, I think I'm good with virtual. I just confirm. And I pick, there is some availability for today, maybe, let's say, maybe 1 p.m. Let's wait a couple of hours and I go next. I have the option to review if everything is what I was meant to organize. I have space for some notes, so I can be proactive and inform Adam about something, and then I will just confirm the appointment. And we will both receive a notification, an appointment in our calendar. Now, let's go back to the presentation. So we are seeing Sophia organizing her connection with Adam. Now it's the turn of Adam. We're looking at Adam, who is an advisor, and he's supporting students for the first 3 semesters. And he's focused on supporting the students holistically and ensuring they have all the resources they need to thrive. How he does it, I'm going to show you in a second. Now, we just change to, just move this part around. I'm now looking at Salesforce from the eyes of an internal user. Previously, I was using a portal as a student. Now I'm the advisor. As an advisor, I got the functionalities and the screen and the information that I need in order to perform my activities. I can see I will start from the home page at the moment. I'm looking at the alerts. I'm serving, or I've been connected with 371 students. There are 3 alerts. Alerts are critical in order to understand who needs to be helped, with what priority. I can see some key performance indication. On the right-hand side, I can see there is a task I need to follow up with Jane and some events. Lower down, again, more information, my student with most open alerts, the open alerts, appointment, care plans, and so on. But as I need to start my day and get ready for my appointments, I will start looking at the appointments that are on my schedule. This is the appointment we just created. If you remember, it's for 1 o'clock today. And because I have 371 students, I don't quite remember each of them. So I will just click on Sophia and have a look at the information that we have collected. Now, you will see that for all the rest of the demo, as I'm playing a role of advisor, I won't be moving away from this screen. Everything that I need is in this screen. So I have some key information. That's Sophia, telephone number, emails, usual stuff. I have some key information coming from the LMS about performance. Now, some of the data that you see here, it's coming from the LMS and the SMS. That allows me to focus on her without having to navigate, switch, and search across different applications. So I can see some key information, but also what I love is to keep an eye on the predictions. Now, this is artificial intelligence. It's not the generative AI in this case. This is the prediction AI. So it's telling me the persistence, the likelihood to persist, and the risk, which is pretty high. Why 60% of risk of not persisting? Well, doesn't just give me the number, but also why. And I can see the number of library logins is pretty low, and also advisory visit. Absence has been high, and so on. And also the improvements, the suggestion that I should discuss with Sophia when I get the chance in the upcoming meeting, in order what she needs to do in order to be more successful. And that's definitely something that I want to keep an eye. But as a conversation starter, when I talk to her, maybe I want to pick something from the interest. I know she got some interest in some internship, so this could be something that I definitely want to talk during our meeting. Now, if we focus on the center, this kind of a head-up display, I can see what I mentioned before. So information coming from LMS, SMS, regarding performance, absence, credit hours, and so on. Again, in a second, I get a picture of where she's standing. Alerts, a bit lower down. These are critical for my function. I can see we got 3 alerts. Well, she's not been to the library for 7 days. In the context of this demo, this is supposed to be something that raises an alert. What can I do with alerts? Well, definitely be informed. That's the first stage as I speak to her. But also I may update. Maybe we discuss something and I want to update this alert, or maybe to remove it. I want to snooze because maybe it's not that time critical. Or I want to do what's called the case swarming, which is a capability of Slack. Slack is our communication tool. And with this, I could raise the situation, raise the case with my most knowledgeable peers in order to tap into the conversation and be proactive, reactive or proactive, and ultimately solve the issue. Anyway, a number of alerts, the grade is a bit low. When one is red, this is definitely more critical. Sophia has an understanding balance, so she can't register to the next term. So this is an alert that has also created not just information for me, but also an alert for the administration department in order to check what's wrong, whether she needs any type of support. Lower down, a number of key information. Let me just scroll through the ones that I think are more interesting. We got, she is enrolled into a course, environmental studies, which is made of a few exams. And this is something that I really love. I don't know whether I love more this one or the prediction, but maybe this one. This gives me a clear view of where she's standing across a number of dimensions. So, and you can see in green, this is the average. So the average of the cohort. So I can see that she's definitely doing more absences. She's 12 against an average of 5. And also, for some reason, her performance is also higher, which is another element to consider. At the same time, it's a bit lower on advisory visit and credit hours. So without thinking too much, without reading through the numbers, in a second, I look at this picture and I get an idea of her footprint. But also, this is the picture of today. Things may be improving or the other way around over time. So this is the history over time. So it's not just important to see where she is at, but if she's displaying an improvement, maybe this picture is not that relevant. It's like when you go to a GP, you read the data, the current blood sample results, but they have to be seen in the context of a history. And the same is true for my performance and other information that, for the sake of time, I'm not going to spend too much time about. Cases, well, if I'm going to speak with her, definitely I may want to have a look at the open cases, because these are the cases she's expecting an answer. Again, this is a panel of glass where everything is brought into one page. So I can see, even though I'm not involved in these cases, I can see where she's standing. If I click, I could see the conversation. Life events. I want to be in her shoes. I want to see the main milestone of her experience in the university. I can see she was at a summer camp. She submitted an application. And she's going to have in a few days the first year orientation. So it's just so helpful. I don't need to scroll through data, look for compare dates and see how it, what's happening in the future and what has happened in the past. Relationship, I may find out when I look here, for example, that Alex Barton is brother and is also a student. So knowing that she has a brother or a parent or maybe an alumni, it's very important in order to understand, again, her perception of her experience as opposed to someone who is close to her. Appointments, I just want to show you a bit of the notes. These are the notes that have been shared by all other advisors. Notes can be private, public, we know some of them may be sensitive. This is where I can see, for example, there was a note with a colleague of mine where she was in need of tutoring for the calculus course. Again, it's about sharing information. Who else is helping Sophia? Remember the team that we saw on Sophia's screen? That's exactly the same view from the other side. Again, everything is shared. Her care plans, I can see that she'll be assigned the care plans, exactly the same as we saw before. The different tasks, now in chronological order, what she needs to perform in order to comply with the care plans. And also, there was an issue with calculus, and she needed some tutoring. I can see she's been enrolled into a tutoring program, which can be made of sessions and participation. So there is a whole wall around this program that I'm not going to dive into today for the sake of time. Another view of whatever she's been interacting for with us in a chronological order. We can have an appointment, we can have a case, we can have a call, we can have all sorts of events in a chronological order. The ones happening in the past and the ones scheduled for the future. Again, it's just another great way.
Marco,
Yes.
Apologies for interrupting you, but we have just last 4 minutes left towards the end of the. We can have just one question from the audience. I can request you to please.
Sure. Look, I was going to finish. Basically, what happens? I will have the appointment with her, and during the appointment, I will be able to connect to create a task and create a case and an email right away. So, just to summarize, if I go back to where we started, we've seen how easy it is for Sophia to connect with the advisor and at the same time to stay on top of the task list. And from an advisor perspective, how everything is brought into a single view and how information is available from and to other touch points for an holistic support. Now, with this, I thank you for your attention and I hand over to you, Rachel.
Great, thank you so much. I think we're going to head into the Q&A portion with Gita.
Yes, and also, I think Greg has already answered too by typing. So we'll just head off to one of the questions that was posted by Tim in the chat box to the panel. So the question is, how are universities using Gen AI to support student retention? So any panel would like to answer this question? Maybe Craig can respond.
Yeah, I think at the moment, Gen AI is still at its very early stages in terms of us helping with student retention. So there's a lot of buzz around using Gen AI as a back-end solution for the likes of chatbots. So it does allow us to do relatively high quality chatbots. We're starting to see early version embedding, and as Marco referred to with that predictive score, we're seeing predictive AI still being used. So, and I think what we've seen overall with both predictive and generative AI is it often comes back to the quality of your data about what outcome you're going to get. And in a few instances, we've had to improve the quality of our data. We learnt this with our initial use of Watson and AI.io. So you can ingest large data sources like the large language models do, and then the AI will learn when it's giving bad responses. But if a student asks a chatbot, what day does semester start, and it gives the wrong answer, that's a bad place to start, and you could lose the students straight away. So what the sorts of things we've done in the past is we've made sure that the top 20 or the top 50 questions that students or staff are likely to ask of a chatbot, we're going to give really accurate answers right from the very word go, or otherwise we've lost people straight away. I think and this is speaking on behalf of Salesforce and speaking on behalf of any enterprise level product, everyone's embedding capability into their product, but doing it cautiously, because we haven't learned how to really fully control this beast yet. And as I referenced earlier, we saw the example where Samsung put a whole heap of their data into, I think it was ChatGPT, for example, and released their source code inadvertently because they weren't cautious enough. I'm not wanting to malign Samsung, but we all need to learn from that and just make sure we're a little bit cautious at the start.
Okay. Thank you so much. And at this time, we have to wrap up our webinar. So I'd like to thank all the panelists, Rachel, Mark, and Craig, and to all the audience for joining us today. And everyone who's registered for this event will receive the full on-demand version of this webinar, which will be hosted on the THE website, along with a summary article of its key findings for those of you who would like to revisit or share this content. So we hope that you'll join us again in the future and have a good day ahead. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.